speak about ourselves and then I can make a start. So thank you, Ruman. Thanks for this nicest opportunity. I'm like really happy about the topic also. And yeah, myself, Supriya Pawar. I was a part of Accenture team. I was working as a technical and delivery team lead. Recently, I've joined into Wipro company, and yeah, I am a MuleSoft integration certified, architect certified, platform architect certified, and I've been practicing Mule since last 4 years. And yeah, it has become my nicest hobby, like a good hobby, I would say, that I am speaking in several meetups. Also, Kochi MuleSoft meetup group is there, which is in India. So I'm a meetup leader for that as well. So yeah, pretty much about myself. Sumit, Deepak.
Yeah, so thank you, Supriya. So yeah, first of all, a big thank you to all Ruman Khan for organizing this event and allowing us to give a presentation on the topic, and also the participants for making the precious time, taking out the precious time of their life and joining the session. Myself, Sumit Ahuja, I have total 5+ years of experience, and the relevant MuleSoft is 4+. I am also MuleSoft developer, integration plus architect certified. Recently pursued the Azure fundamental certification as well. I'm currently working for Wipro as a technical lead, and also I'm participating in multiple MuleSoft meetups, and also I'm also the leader of MuleSoft Kochi group. So hope you will love the session. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Sumit. So myself, Deepak Taluri, and th thank you, Ruman, and thanks for everyone who have joined this session. Speaking about myself, actually, I'm working with Accenture from past 2.5 years, and almost I have 6.5 years of experience and 5.5 years of experience in MuleSoft, and I'm working as a technical team lead in Accenture. Over to
Thank you,
Supriya.
Deepak. Thank you, Deepak. Thank you so much. I would request you to go to the next slide. Okay, so before starting, like before knowing too much about Azure Data Lake integration with MuleSoft and presenting demo in front of you, we'll have a quick walkthrough about what is Azure Data Lake, what are the important parameters into that, and why does it exist and who uses it, etc. things. So thanks again. And to give you a bit of update on what is Azure Data Lake, it's a part of a Microsoft Azure public cloud platform which includes more than 200 products and a cloud services. It basically supports a big data analytics. It provides unlimited storage for the structured, semi-structured, and unstructured data. Now, Azure Data Lake itself can, if I emphasize on the word lake, meaning, a dumping thing wherein too much of data, for example, whether it is a semi-structured, unstructured, or structured data, those all get stored into this Azure Data Lake storage. The three main important things of this is Azure Data Lake Storage, Azure Data Lake Analytics, and Azure HD Insights. I'll just give you a brief about all these three so that you will clearly understand the concept. Azure Data Lake Storage, as I have already mentioned, it can handle high data load. It provides a single storage platform that organization can use to integrate their data with. Users here can manage and access the data within this lake, and it uses HDFS. HDFS is a Hadoop distributed file system. So whoever has access, whatever platform has the access to use HDFS, they can take advantage to use a Azure Data Lake storage. Coming Talking about a Azure Data Lake Analytics, it's an on-demand analytics platform for big data. Okay, so the users who are our developers or probably architects, they can run massively parallel data. They can transform that data, that they can process that data. The beauty of Azure Data Lake Analytics is that whatever data you're processing, how much ever processing you're doing, that much only you have to pay, nothing extra. So the backend language is U-SQL, is a big data query language. It is created by the Azure Data Lake Analytics Service. Okay, and what I mentioned, that user can develop and parallelly they can transform or process the data, that they have in Python, SQL, .NET, and other types of data they can do. Let's talk about the Azure HD Insights. It is a cluster management. So this solution, it makes it easy you can say fast, cost effective to process a massive amount of a data. It's a cloud deployment of Hadoop, which I earlier mentioned, that enables users to take the advantage of the open source. For example, if you see this screen, Apache, there's a Spark, Kafka, etc. So this particularly supports the ETL. Now you must have heard middleware and ETL. So ETL is mostly wherein, not too much logic is used, but it is, to gather the information and etc., to take out the information in a bulk, in a load. So also this can support a data warehousing, a machine learning, etc. Now, these are the three concepts I briefed you. Now, let's talk about why data lake. We will definitely come, but before that, who needs a Azure Data Lake? So, it's a solution designed for organization that want to take advantage of a big data. It provides a big platform that can help developers, data scientists, analysts to store the data of any size, of any format, and they can perform all type of processing and transforming using this. Now, if you see this diagram very carefully, how do a data lake works? So if you read the first option, if you can see, it is a water like lake. Okay, so the first option is the incoming flows represents a multiple raw data archives ranging from email, spreadsheet, social media content. Now you must be seeing that why this is a different type of data. If you see a structured data on the left side, that talks about the information which is in row and column. So, for example, you must have worked with a spreadsheet, the nicest XML responses, requests, JSON request responses. That is something which is a structured data. Whereas, if you see on the right side, that is a unstructured data, which is a email, a PDF file. Now, you can imagine accidentally you must have opened some of your image in the Notepad++, and the kind of data you see, it is very, very unstructured. There is another type of data also, which is a semi-structured. So semi-structured is like a delimited files. Okay. For example, you are taking a digital photographs. Okay. If you go back and if you check the same photograph, there is at least a timestamp, at least a device ID is given, or image name by default it is given. So it is called as a semi-structured data. Out of all these three datas which I have mentioned, the easy to manage is a structured data, definitely. Now, talking about our first point, you can see a lake where it is drawn for the second point. So the first point is dumping their different type of data in the lake, which is a point number second. So that is a, if you see the point number two, so the reservoir of a water is a data set where you can where you run analytics. So here is the step wherein you're processing, transforming the data. Now coming to the third point, this is talking about the response, like what is coming out of the lake, like Azure Data Lake storage is a analyzed, is a structured, is a analyzed data, you can say. And now you check the fourth point. Do this process, you are able to actually sift through all the, and you can quickly gain the business insights, meaning you can resolve your purpose having such a type of data. So this is what, how data lake should be used. Can you move to the next slide, Deepak? Talking about the prerequisites and then common use cases now, as part of Azure Data, as you know, MuleSoft 4 specifically, above 7.1, you can use this, and this is customized in a form of a connectors, the Azure. Next slide, we will see that. But when we talk about a prerequisite, definitely we must have uh, this thing, a studio, and the version has to be above 7.1, as I said. And then, if the connector is not readily available, but you have to download this connector explicitly, you can add Azure Data Lake storage, something like that, in Exchange, and you can easily download that a plugin, I would say. So next is, let's talk about the common use cases. Now, Deepak, can you move to the next slide? As part of a MuleSoft and Azure Data Lake storage integration, this is how the connector is going to look. And these are the multiple operations, or you can say a common use cases, I would call. This much it is offering to us. It is offering create a file system, delete file system, and the read part, update part, delete part, such a operations which you can see on the screen. This much operation as of now Azure Data Lake storage is providing. And yeah, in the upcoming slides we will see that how it is used and the demonstration purpose. So any question as of now? Otherwise, Sumit, you can take over.
For now,
For
I
now,
don't
I don't
see
see
any such
any such
questions in the
questions in
chat
the chat
window,
window,
but
but
Roman can
Roman
help
can
with
help
that.
with that.
Or otherwise,
Or
I can
otherwise, I can
continue.
continue.
There's one
There's one
question.
question.
Supriya, if you can
If you
mute.
can mute.
Yeah, I
Supriya, can
can.
you mute? Yeah. All right, thank you. Yeah, there's one question asking if it is a select or a premium connector on the Azure Data Lake.
I think it's a select connect. I don't think you required any additional license for that.
Yeah, it's a select connector.
Yeah.
All right, let's move.
So yeah, thank you, Supriya, for giving us a walkthrough on Azure Data Lake storage. So my part is I am going to speak on some put some glimpse on Azure Data Lake storage generation 2, and also the differences of generation 1 and generation 2. So as a part of this session and demo on the live demonstration, we are going to focus more on Gen 2 only. But before we jump into a live demonstration, I just want to put some light on Gen 2 and the differences. So the very first point says itself Azure Data Lake Gen 1 is a file system storage in which data is distributed in blocks in a hierarchical file system. While on the other side, we have Gen 2 is Gen 2 is basically a superset of Gen 1, and it contains both the file system storage as well and the object storage as well. So file system storage for the performance and security basis, and the object storage for the more scalability purpose. So why we are calling it as a superset? Because it combines the features from generation 1, such as file system semantics, directories, even the file level securities, scaling with low cost, and it also provides the high availability and even disaster recovery capabilities from the Azure block storage. So Microsoft itself is calling generation 2 as a no compromise data lake. And if we move further on the next point, so hot cold storage tiers are not supported in Gen 1. So what are these hot cold storage tiers? So these are nothing but the features of blob storage. I'll talk about blob storage in next slide, but yeah, these are the features of blob storage. So when data lake generation 2 is created with hot access tier, then it must like the file available in the storage is readily accessible. So storage cost for that hot access tier is higher, whereas the access cost is lower. So in cases if these files are not being accessed frequently, so it will lead to paying a lot of cost. On the other side, cold storage, the purpose of creating the cool access tier in data lake generation 2 is that the file or storage is not accessed frequently. So for example, if you have monthly reports or annual reports which will be consumed, the files will be consumed only once a month or once a year, so we'll have less access, so which will reduce the access cost. So in cool storage tier, storage cost is lower, whereas access cost is higher. It's a reverse way. And in case, sorry, if these files are accessed frequently, it will lead to paying a lot of cost. So this was all about hot and cold storage tier. And the next point is redundant storage is not supported. So what is this redundant storage? So Azure basically stores multiple copies of your data so that it is protected from planned and unplanned events. So when we say planned and unplanned events, it includes hardware failures, network failures, power outages. Yeah, that's it. And data in Azure storage account is always replicated a couple of times, probably 3 times in the primary region. So this topic, this topic is itself a vast topic, so I'm not going to talk in much detail. But redundant storage for the disaster recovery ability and like all replicating the files 3 times in the primary region is only supported in generation 2. So these are the high level features of generation 1 and generation 2. Deepak, can you please move on? Yeah, next slide. So this is how generation 2 looks like, a complete mixture of blob storage plus generation 1. So if we see on the left hand side, we have blob storage. The features of blob storage are like hot and cold tier, we have redundant storage, we have. So generation 2 is a complete mixture of blob plus generation 1. So what is blob storage? I'll talk about that. Azure blob storage is nothing but a feature of Microsoft Azure, which allows users to store large amounts of unstructured data not the structure, only unstructured data on Microsoft data storage platforms. Blob itself stands for binary large object, which involve objects such as images, and we have multimedia files, etc., etc. And I would also like to give some information on generation 1. So generation 1 is going to deprecate soon on February 19, 2024. So people are in process of migration activity from generation 1 to generation 2. So that's the going on. So for now, generation 1 is going to deprecate soon. So all we have to process on generation 2 only. Yeah. So next slide is Azure portal walkthrough. So I'm going to walk through on a couple of topics on the Azure portal, like how we have, what are the prerequisites to have a connectivity between MuleSoft and Azure. So before going into Azure portal,
Yes, before you move on to that photo, there are two questions from Dhananjay. One is in one of the, I'll just read out the question for you. So in one of the projects, I'm onboarding project team using HTTP request connector to connect to Azure, do all the functions. What is your suggestion? Which is better, the connector or the API through HTTP request?
yeah. So I think connector, as Supriya already answered actually, connector, it's inside the connector, it's called an API only. Okay. So so API, calling an API is much faster in intensity than the connector. So but both are reliable. Since we have a connector itself of Azure in MuleSoft, so we can go for connector. So in that, because we have several options, configuration settings, exception handling, and we have different varieties, so we can go for that. But in case you go for REST API, so you can go for REST API as well.
So just to add to that, right? Like a general recommendation from MuleSoft is, if there is a connector, use a connector, right? The reason being, the connector, the way it is written, is probably gives you a little bit more performance benefit than using a REST API. But if the connector doesn't support your functions, all the functions which so connectors may not support everything which REST API may support, right? So if that's the case, then you can go with a REST API. But first preference always is use a connector, and second is REST API, and the third, of course, is build your own, right? Uh, yeah, and there is a second question, Sumit, regarding, I think it's a availability zone. Gen 2, is it in different? I'm assuming AZ is availability zone. Do you know?
Question. I don't see any question in the chat. Like,
It says Gen 2 is in different AZs. I'm assuming he's referring to availability zone. Is that what it is, Dhananjay? Yes.
If you start leveraging the storage account, so what exactly happens is you get amount of space you request for. Then obviously, as a part of high availability, or you'll be having multiple background availability zones. It again depends on uh, what type of messages you're trying to access. I mean, there are frequent messages or infrequent messages. So depending on that, when you're creating your storage account, you have an option where you can select high availability or not. So if that is the case, then what happens is the blob you're trying to access shall share the availability zones on multiple availability zones actually.
and I guess generation 2 is there is a limitation on selecting the regions as well while going for generation 2. So they are working on that. So yep.
Fine. Thank you. Let's move on.
Yep, thank you. So looking at the screen, we are now seeing on the Azure portal. So if you see, before going for the Azure account, we have to create an Azure free account. So here we also have created a free account which lasts for 30 days. And in that free account, we'll get some amount of money, like that is 14,100 Indian rupees. Okay, in order to play with the resources, services, and also there are some services, which are available in your free edition of account. You can't use the all resources. So also with your free account, you will get a free subscription. So subscription is nothing but logical construct that groups together your resource groups and their resources. So the hierarchy goes in that way. first we have to create Azure account, then you have a Azure subscription, and under that Azure subscription you have to create a resource group. Okay, resource group and resources. So what is resources actually? So I want to talk about what is Azure resource. So in Azure, the term resource refers to an entity managed by Azure. For example, all the virtual machines, virtual networks, and all your storage accounts are all referred to an Azure resource. So each resource in Azure must belong to an Azure resource group. So a resource group is simply a logical construct that groups all your multiple resources together. So they are managed as a single entity based on a life cycle or security. So in simple words, if we say, so everything that is born together gets managed together, duplicates together, goes together in a resource group. So the hierarchy goes in that way. We have an Azure account, then we have a subscription, then in that we have a resource group which will contain all the resources. So Deepak, if you can show the resource that we have created. So see test hyphen rg hyphen sgs. So this is a resource that we have created, resource group, and under that we have created a storage account which test MuleSoft SGS. So this is a storage account of type blob, and while we created this, there was an option of enabling generation 2, and we have enabled that. So in that way we have enabled a generation 2 data lake storage, blob storage. And if you see under that, if Deepak might be opening that, yeah, so he's showing us the option resource group. You have to select the resource group, and he is showing us the option of like why like how we can enable the generation 2. Yep, blob storage. Yeah, data lake generation 2. So normally by default it's disable, but we have to go and enable it while creating a resource, while creating a blob storage account. Okay, so Deepak, you can go on the data explorer. Yep. So this is the data storage explorer where we have, and there is a container here where we have to push all our files here. So first of all, we have to create a file system which will manage all the files. So under that file system, we can create, update, delete, we can perform all the CRUD operations basically. So I'll hand over to Deepak. Deepak will show you the live demonstration of each and every operation. So, yep. Thank you. Roman, if you have any question on my part, so we can take it, or otherwise I will hand over to Deepak.
There's one question from Kunal saying
Okay.
any payload size limitation when using Azure connector?
No, Azure connector, we don't have any limitation as such. So it's we can upload a huge number of files. So we haven't tried a huge size, but yeah, there is no limitation as such.
Do you know what was the maximum size you may have used on your payload?
So
If
we
you
normally
remember.
have tried 500, 600 MB, but we haven't gone far from that. So
Okay, thank you.
yep. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sumit. So switch back to Anypoint Studio. Okay, so what we have done as a part of this demo is try to create an Mule 4 application where we are, trying to leverage the Mule Azure Storage Connector, Azure Data Lake Storage Connector. So if I move to the quickly to the POM file dependency, where you can see the latest version we are using is 1.0.1. Depending on the release notes, you can use the latest data lake storage connector. And quickly, if you just recap the same session, earlier when Supriya was talking about the list of operations, what we are trying to leverage as a part of this data lake storage connector are these what you can see at on my screen. So before I just move into each one of the flow or a demonstration of each operation, I just wanted to give the high level nomenclature of what exactly the file system is, and what do you mean by path actually, what is the difference between file system and a path, and what are we exactly trying to achieve here out of these operations actually. So quickly, I'll just move to small glimpse on Storage Explorer. This is a out-of-box tool where you can, access your storage account, and also the blob containers, queues, and tables. So there are multiple services, given by the, Azure Storage. So out of them, the first important thing which I need to say is about the creation of the file system. First of all, what do you mean by file system? In the data lake storage nomenclature, the file system is nothing but it's just a blob container. Okay, it's just kind of balloon kind of thing where you can you can dump multiple different type of data inside this. And what do you mean by path? Then path is nothing but it's just a folder under your blob container where you can simply put your files or segregate your files with respect to your functionality. Okay, so in this demo what we are trying to do is we are trying to create multiple blob containers, and also we are going to create directories inside that particular blob container, and then update and delete the files inside that blob container. And also we have some operations where we can list out the available blob containers inside Azure storage account, or available files inside the existing blob containers, or maybe new blob containers. So let me quickly switch back to the first one, that is a create file system. So what do you mean by create file system? As I have already told you, file system is nothing but to create an blob container inside the storage account. So what you try to do is you try to let me first explain the connector configuration. If we clearly see here, there are uh, multiple different types of connectivities here to be used. The first important thing is OAuth 2.0. If you click on OAuth 2.0, we need the connected app to be created to access the Azure storage. So once you create the connected app inside the Azure portal, you get your client ID and secret. You use your client ID and secret for the OAuth 2.0 uh, connectivity. So this is one of the most used, and the most secured way of connecting to Azure. And the most frequent thing which we generally use is about the shared access signature. So what we generally try to do, I have already told you that we need to create a storage account before we leveraging the operations of Azure Data Lake storage. And on top of that, you need to have the SaaS token. What do you mean by SaaS token? So say suppose you have an Azure storage account, and you need to access your Azure storage account, and you need to perform some various operations on top of it, like read, update, delete, or something like that. So what you try to do, you try to generate a temporary SaaS token on your storage account inside the portal. Okay, so this SaaS token is actually having certain validity, whatever you give inside the Azure portal. Say suppose you need it for you need to access it for 2 weeks. So you can raise a token for 2 weeks with respect to the create, update, and delete operations, and you can leverage this shared access signature. And the third will be the shared key connection. So this is nothing but you have your storage account name, and obviously you'll be having your storage account key once you have the storage account created. So you can use both of them, and you can leverage the shared key connection. So as a part of this demo, what we have done is we have used the shared access signature, and we have raised this SaaS token which was valid for 1 month. And we are trying to use this SaaS token for creating, update, or delete operations on the Azure Data Lake storage. So let me quickly go back to this create file system. So for this, what we have to give is the file system name, that is the blob container name. Okay, currently I can show you that there is only one blob which has been created, that is known as test MuleSoft one. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one more file system, that is the blob container. Okay, so if you see, we have exposed an API where it is a GET request, and we are taking the header as the file system name. I'm going to create it as a test MuleSoft 2. So this will be the new file system which I'm going to create. And if you see, we just get an empty response, empty 200 response saying that 200 okay, that the container has been created. So if I go back quickly to the blob containers and I refresh it, you see there is a new blob container came here. You can call it as a file system which has got created. Okay, so next operation would be delete file system. So whatever you have created right now, you can delete the same file system as well by sending the file system name as a part of header. I can delete the same file system actually if you See, so I'm using the file system as a header parameter, and again, I have exposed a service where I can delete that particular file system which I have just created right now. Okay. So again, we don't get any kind of valid response, but you just get 200 okay, saying that the container has been deleted, or the file system has been deleted. So if you see, my test MuleSoft 2 has been deleted completely. So these are the two interesting services where you can delete your file system and where you can create your file system. So let me switch back to create file system. I'll be creating it again. Uh, just give me a minute. Okay. So let me move to the third most important data lake storage operation, that is create or rename path. As I have already told you, path is nothing but it's just a file. Okay, file inside a container. Okay, so in this case, what we are going to do is we have two options here. We can use the same connector for creating a directory or creating a file. Directory is nothing but just a folder for segregating your files. Okay, so the first thing what we are going to do is we are going to create a sorry, just give me a minute. We are going to create a directory. Okay, so let me switch back to create directory. So before creating a directory, what I would try to do is I would try to create a file system. Inside that new file system, I am going to create a folder known as input. Okay, so do you guys have any questions till now?
There is one question regarding the pricing from Dhananjay, but I believe the pricing is on Azure, right? So I've just posted a link on pricing of the data lake, Dhananjay. Then second question is from Kalyani. She's asking, where do we get the SAS token from?
That's a good question. So SAS token should will be generated from your storage account. If you can see it on my screen, once you create your you have an option where you have to move to the shared access signature, what you can see on my screen, and you have to enable the services what you want to use, on which object you want to use, and then you have to give the start and end date till when you want to use that particular service on that storage account, and you can create your generate SAS and the connection string over here. Okay, once you generate this, you will be getting your SAS token here in this portal, and you can copy that over to the to your studio. I hope that answers the question. Okay, so I have redeployed my application so that I can create a particular directory inside a file system. Okay, so my file system name is test MuleSoft 3, and the path is import. I don't have any container known as MuleSoft 3. So what I'm going to do, just give me a minute. Right, it was a post request. Okay, so now if you see here on my screen, file system does not exist. Okay, I'm trying to create a file. I'm trying to create a file, sorry, a directory inside a file system that does not exist. So in that, not for not found. So what I would try to do right now is I would try to create the folder inside the existing file system, that is test MuleSoft 2. If I would go back and check right now, inside the test MuleSoft 2, let me try to refresh this. You see, you have got your input folder, that is the directory. So what happens, you don't have the file system and you try to use this create or rename path, so that you want to create a directory inside the file system which doesn't even exist, you get not found. So in the similar way, what you can try to do is you can try to change that to file. And in the path, what you have to do is, in the path you have to give the folder, and if you want to create a folder, you can give the folder, and you can give the file name. Okay, like sample.txt or something like that. So what it would try to do, it would try to create a sample that you can see it in my on my screen under test underscore MuleSoft 1. If you can see here, it will create a text file, or it can be rather any kind of extension, because as I have already told you, you can put structured and any unstructured data as well. So you can put various types of data here, because this is just a blob storage. You can put your images, you can put your videos, and you can put any kind of unstructured data as well. You can upload them inside your particular folder. So in the similar way, if you can go down, we have multiple other operations as well. I can switch here to each one of them, where I can demonstrate like listing file system, listing paths, and everything. But on the time constraint, what I wanted to do is I wanted to just give you a over walkthrough where you have multiple connectors on the screen. Say suppose if I take an example of list file systems. So what does this exactly the list file systems do? So it will list all the particular file systems which are under your sorry, which are under your Azure storage account. Okay, so let me do one thing. List file systems. um, okay, before that, if you want to check how many file system do I have two of them, and I want to list both of them. If you see on my screen, file systems, it's nothing but it just gives you an array of objects of file systems, which will contain the e tag id of each one of the file system. Okay, and it gives the name and the last modified date of that particular file system here. So in the similar way, we do have an operation known as list file paths. So what does this exactly do? This list file paths is nothing but it will list all the files or the directories which are present inside the blob containers or the file system. Okay, so these are the multiple operations what we can leverage using the Azure Data Lake storage. And there are few more important or key operations which we can use. They are the uh, where is it? Lease path. So what exactly do you mean by lease path? So there is a story behind that, because what we try to generally do is, if I go to Azure storage and go to sample text and right click on this, there is an option of acquiring lease to the particular sample text. That means you can apply various different type of lease permissions on this particular file. Okay, there is a list of lease permissions which are in the which you can see it in the Azure documentation. Like you can block the access for this particular text file, or you can you can block the updates on this particular file, or you can directly block the deletion of this particular file. So there are different type of lease permissions which are or which can be applied on the individual files. Okay, so those, if you want to check these lease properties on each one of the file, then you can use the lease operation inside the data lake storage connector lease path. Okay, so in the similar way, you can use this all different type of operations on the data lake storage connector, and you can perform your crud operations on this particular blob containers. Okay, I think that's it from my side. I just wanted to know.
Deepak,
There
we
are,
have a question. Yeah.
Okay.
go ahead.
Yeah, so there's a question from Dhananjay. What is lease path? So I think Deepak just explained. So I think that is clear. And there is one more question. What is the difference between update and rename path?
Update and rename path.
Yep.
Okay, that's a good question. So rename path is nothing but what it would try to do is, you want to rename a particular file. Okay, say suppose I have given here an example that I'm creating a directory. Now I want to rename this directory. Okay, then what I would try to do is I would give the property known as rename source, and I would try to give the new name of that original directory. That, say suppose my directory name is input, I want to change it to output. That I can just rename the source as output, and I can start my application. What it would do, it would find the input directory and it would change or rename that particular directory. But going back to the update connector, what it exactly does is it will update your content of the files. Okay, if you can see, there are two operations on top of that. You'll uh, cannot see this. Okay, somehow it's not populating, to be honest, but you'll be having two operations. Yeah, append and flush. So what does this do is that append is nothing but you want to update your content of your file. Say suppose I have a new content which has to be appended to the old content inside the file. Then you can update that file with respect to that new content, or you can delete the existing content in the file. That means update is used to either update the particular file, while rename is nothing, just to rename those files or directories inside your blob containers.
Thank you. There is one more question from Srinivas. How do we access Azure DB? Is there a separate connector?
That's a good question. Maybe I think we have to get back on that. Maybe I think we
Yeah.
do have other connector, but we have to check that.
Yeah, so we are focusing on in the session on the MuleSoft Data Lake connector. We are still exploring Azure on a high level. So Azure Data Lake storage is all about all the operations that we have showed in the session, but there may be separate connector or there may be some different way to connect to have an established connectivity from MuleSoft between MuleSoft and Azure DB. So yeah, so we can get back to you offline in that case. Is that fine? Okay, thank you, Srinivas.
So
One
here is,
question. Sorry. Just interesting to see there was something called as unauthorized. Why would you use unauthorized there?
that's a good question. It's like, if you are using OAuth 2.0, what you would be trying to do is you would be authorizing a particular user to either, how can you tell that? There will be an option where you have to give access to this particular storage account for a particular user during the initial OAuth dance activity, correct? So that means you are giving a temporary access to that user to authenticate with Azure actually. Okay. So in that case, if you want to revert the permissions of that user who is using that OAuth 2.0 authentication, then you can use this unauthorized to remove the permissions for that particular user, so that he cannot perform that OAuth operation again.
Got it. Thank
Yep.
Thank you. So
So
Roman
here,
is something. These are the reference links. Yeah. Yeah. Deepak, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, these are some of the uh, check out during your free time. So first one is just to create a free account, and second one is about the release notes of data lake storage connector with the common use cases, and the third one is nothing to we are trying to explain it data lake gen 2 more deeply. The two below two links would really explain you the internal concepts of data lake gen 2.
Okay, is this presentation, we can share this with the participants? Is
Yeah,
that okay
sure.
with you guys?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Right. And one more thing, I know you were showing the demo application. Is that somewhere in GitHub where we can get an access link to that, so that way we can share that as well? Or
Yeah, maybe I think we can do that as well. I'll try to upload that and share the link as well along with the PPT just
awesome.
after
All right.
this. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So Roman, are we starting with the quiz questions, or is there something you want to pick that up first?
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. That's the most awaited piece of the meetup, right? So
Yeah.
I hope
So,
everybody paid attention.
so yeah, guys, there are very basic questions. So I'm going to post one by one in the chat window. Is it fine, Roman?
Yeah, for those who are new, the way we do it is right. Like Sumit, you will post a question on the. Actually, you can ask question, right? You don't have to post it. So Sumit, you can ask a question, and whoever knows the answer, please type it on the chat window. Whichever is the first correct answer will be the winner, and we'll ask three questions, and we are picking a winner for those three questions. And those guys will I'll reach out to you guys, and you can actually request for a voucher for a in-person sorry, there's no in-person now, so for a instructor-led training, right? So yeah, guys, hope you guys were paying attention to everything what these guys said. And yeah, Sumit, all yours.
Yep, thank you. So the very first question I'm going to ask is hot cold storage tires is not is supported in Azure Data Lake Storage Generation 1. So I'll repeat, hot and cold storage tires are supported in Azure Data Lake Storage Generation 1. So it's a true statement or a false statement.
But before even you said true or false statement, there were some answers. This is a tricky one. Sumit,
Yeah, I'm
or
just looking on the answers. Yeah. So are we still waiting for the answers, or I'll reveal the answer in that case?
I think you already got a lot of answers. This
Yeah.
was like first four answers were for the first, right?
Yeah,
Roughly
yeah.
all the
The
25 answers came
fastest
from my
the
part.
fastest one will be the winner. The Ruma, you're on mute. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I was saying, can you pick the winner so I can reach out to them?
Okay, so I can see Dhananjay Verma has given the first answer false, and yeah, he's the fastest one. And then after that, we have Srinivas and Hiralal. So if you want to pick one or two or three, and then
No, we
can
are
you?
picking only one, first one, Sumit.
Okay,
So,
so
so there are
Dhananjay Verma is the winner for this question.
awesome. All right. Hey, Dhananjay, if you can DM me your email, that'll be great. I'll reach out to you. All right.
Yeah, and
Uh,
he won't be participating in the next question, right?
yeah, yeah. Dhananjay, please don't answer the next question. Anyways, we will not pick you for next one. All right.
Okay, okay.
So,
So guys, here's coming the second question. So okay. So Dash is a place to pull the data enterprises want to gather, store, analyze, and turn into insights and action. So the options are Azure Generation 1, B Data Lake, C Blob Storage. So I'll repeat. Dash is a place to pull the data enterprises want to gather, store, analyze, and turn into insights and action. Azure Generation 1, Data Lake, and Blob Storage. You can choose ABC if you want. Okay, we can see many answers. Okay, so if I want to pick a winner, so I think Kalyani is the fastest one here for the second question, Roman.
isn't it second? So you,
But
so
Sumit,
Oh
Data
yeah,
Lake was
Sumit,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
said data lake is the right answer, and Varuna has
yeah. I just saw,
answered
yeah,
first.
Varuna. Yeah,
Yeah,
I just saw that. Yeah, my bad.
yeah, yeah, no problem.
all right.
So
Varuna, can you
Kalyani,
please,
don't kill me, but Varuna, Bubby, she played smart.
Varuna, please ping me your email. I'll reach out to you.
Okay, shall we go for the last question of the day?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, which operation is used to delete the file from an Azure Data Lake storage account? So the options are delete file system, delete path, get path. Okay. So the fastest one is, I can't pronounce his name, Chi Xion Lu. He's given two
No,
as an
Sumit,
option.
what is the answer?
Delete path.
If Path is the answer, so Kunal has given
Yeah,
this part.
Kunal. Okay, okay. Yeah, yeah. There is some
Kunal
Kunal.
Kapoor.
Kunal
Kunal
Kapoor.
Kapoor.
Yeah, yeah. So Roman, we have Kunal Kapoor as a winner for the third quiz question.
All right, guys. Kunal and Varuna, I'm still waiting. Please ping me your email address. Like there's a DM tab on the right side. So just DM me and then I'll reach out to you guys. All right. Thank you so much. Again, Sumit, Supriya, Deepak, thanks a lot for willing to present on Dallas Meetup, and everybody else, participants, thank you so much for taking out your time from a busy day schedule and participating in this meetup. We'll have the recording and I'll get the deck from these guys and sample POC code. So we'll share that probably in a day or two. And yeah, all right. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Bye
Thank
bye.
you,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you, Roman. Good
Bye bye.
night.
Have a
Bye
nice day
bye.
Thank you,
ahead.
everyone. Have a nice day. Bye.